What's good, everyone? Well, welcome to Natural Languages. And in today's video, with today's video, I'm going to start a course for teachers who, are just tired of the traditional grammar approach. They're just tired of seeing how hard the process is for their students, and they're not getting any results. And, many of them actually end up giving up because of the things that I've been talking about for a long time, right? Because it's a hard working process that takes you nowhere, so this is a course for teachers who want to start using comprehensible input ideas and storytelling and games and fun ideas that ironically are actually going to help the students learn the language, right? And in today's video, which is an introduction to the course, I'm going to talk about the basics of how a language is actually acquired, right? Because to me, that's the most important thing that we need to understand in order to know what to do, in order to help our students, right? And also, I'll talk briefly about the different types of resources that I use as a language teacher myself, and the million different ways in which you can tell a story with interaction with your students, with not so much when they're starting out because they're not ready to start speaking yet. I'm going to talk about different types of games, but as you can see, the only thing I'm going to talk about is resources that are going to truly help your students learn the language while they enjoy the process every step of the way. Because again, I'm totally convinced that's the only way to learn any language and pretty much anything in life, to be honest, right? Because if you're not enjoying the process, sooner or later, you're just going to give up. You can be more motivated than other people when you're starting out, so it might take you longer to give up. But if you're trying to learn the language the traditional way with grammar exercises and memorizing vocabulary lists and so on, you're just not going to learn the language, because nobody has in the history of mankind, all right? Because that's not the way the language mechanism works in the brain. That's actually linguistics, and that has nothing to do with the real language acquisition process. Okay, so that's pretty much what this course is going to be about. And now, like I said, I'm going to talk about the basics of how a language is actually acquired. So you know what to expect from this course, okay? And yeah, like in future videos, like I said, I'll get into the specific techniques or how to tell a story, or the things that you need to pay attention to in order to really help your students, okay? And what can you do for them to understand the message, how to make it more comprehensible, and so on, all right? But in today's video, today's introduction video, I want to talk about the basics, like I said. And the most important thing to understand here is that we learn a language by listening and reading when we understand the message. That's it. Okay. Like I'm going to talk about a million things, all right? But this is the most important thing. This is the key. Again, comprehensible input is the key to the entire process. So if your students are listening to the language or reading, and they understand what you're saying or what they're reading, the process is working. It's that simple. Okay. Now, other things. It's also important to understand that the language acquisition process is actually subconscious, okay? Because we adults, we're used to trying to consciously control the process when it comes to language learning, meaning, we pay attention to specific grammar rules, we try to memorize things, and so on, which is a desperate attempt to consciously control the process, like I said, and just a different way that's never worked in the history of mankind, right? And as opposed to that, we just need to focus on, as teachers, we just need to focus on on providing comprehensible input, because that's all it takes to learn a language. And again, we've seen it with kids, every single time. It's a process that works 100% of the time with them. They just listen to the language for a long time until they're ready to start speaking. And, they understand the message because we adults make an effort to make the message comprehensible for them. We use a lot of gestures. We speak slower. We talk about the present moment, like here and now, right, with them. We point at things. We use toys, whatever it is, to help them understand what we mean, And over time, after hours and hours and hours of comprehensible input, it's not going to be comprehensible all the time, I guess, but a lot of it is. So after getting exposed to the language for a long time, they're going to start speaking as a result. Okay, so this is key as well. Like, input is the key to the entire process, comprehensible input, of course, and output will eventually show up as a result, as a consequence of it. Okay, so we don't learn a language when we're speaking, but rather when we're speaking, we're showing that we've learned a language through listening and reading, if that makes sense. Okay, so in the context of this course, what I mean is that all we need to focus on as teachers is provide comprehensible input. That's it. And again, in future episodes, in future lessons, I'll talk about different resources, different ideas, different techniques, stories, games that we can use in order to make it compelling as well. Because that's like the, that's the killer combination, right? If you're providing comprehensible input and they're enjoying the process, but it's game over. It's going to work because they're enjoying every single minute of it and the process working. Okay. But in today's video, I want you to really understand that. Like, you don't need to give them grammar exercises. You don't need to focus on consciously explaining things. All right. And I'll get more specific in future lessons, like I said. But so this is not about teaching the language, right? This is about communicating about something else in the language, right? If that makes sense. So you don't need to teach linguistics. You don't need to teach about the language. You need to communicate, through storytelling, through games, and so on, that happen to be in the language. Okay. So you use language for communication, which is the most important thing. And ironically now, through communication, through focusing on communication, and if they understand the message, they're actually gonna truly acquire the language, right? Which is, again, the same way by which we all acquire a native language. And once again, a process that works 100% of the time. So that's the most important thing. And yeah, in the next video, in lesson number 1, I'll start with a story. Okay, I'm gonna use my native Spanish language for the story. Okay, like, I'm gonna talk about the instructions in English, of course, but the language I'll use to tell the story would be Spanish. So you can sort of play the role of a student while you're watching the video. Okay. And I'll use English for the explanations and to sort of let you know why I'm using the specific gestures here, or what I'm using pictures here, or what I'm doing to make it comprehensible for the students, and so on. Okay, or to keep them engaged, and little things, little techniques like that. Okay. But what I want you to understand today, and we'll wrap things up here in today's introduction video, is that all we need to focus on is providing comprehensible input. That's it. Okay. And because we learn a language by listening and reading, and our ability to speak and write will eventually show up as a consequence. So that's the part we need to focus on as teachers. We need to focus on the input part of the language, listening and reading, right? That's all they need in order to learn the language. And again, I'll talk about how to make it comprehensible and compelling, because that's actually going to help. That's going to keep their motivation intact, and because they're having fun and they're actually learning the language. So yeah, that idea. Then the second idea, that the actual language acquisition process is subconscious, right? So we don't need to pay attention to the specifics of the language, to the form, but rather to communication, to message, which is the most important thing. Okay. And yeah, so that's it. That's all you need to understand for today. Okay. So, just thank you for watching this introduction, and I'll see you in the next video in lesson number 1, in which I'll start with the story. Okay. I'll first start with like the basics of storytelling and creating stories with students, asking them for feedback depending on their level and so on. Okay, perfect. And yeah, later on down the road, once we're done with storytelling a little bit, or once we've covered the basics of storytelling, I start introduction. I start talking about other ideas that we can use, other resources like games, like I said, different types of games, also little tweaks or little differences between stories to make it more interesting, or just to change things a little bit every now and then. Okay. And yeah, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching, like I said, and today and future lessons, any question you may have, any idea, suggestion, whatever it is, just don't hesitate to let me know in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to help you out and to answer your questions. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. I'll see you in lesson number 1. Bye-bye.